My name is Elena Reynolds. I'm 34 years old, and last spring I was denied entry to my own sister's wedding by my mother, until the venue manager quietly asked her if she'd like to explain why she was blocking the woman whose name was on the contract for the entire event. If you had arrived 5 minutes earlier, you would have believed I was a disgruntled guest trying to cause a scene. That was the picture she painted. The wedding was being held at the most expensive venue in our county, an old glass conservatory overlooking the lake, white florals climbing the iron frames, a string quartet warming up inside, guests in pastel dresses and tailored suits drifting through the entrance like everything was perfect. It looked perfect. That's important, because my mother cares more about appearances than reality. When I stepped out of my car, I wasn't emotional, I wasn't late, I wasn't dramatic. I was on time, 40 minutes before the ceremony, wearing a navy dress my sister helped me choose. I walked toward the entrance with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had handled every invoice, every vendor call, every deposit, and then security stepped in front of me. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," one of them said politely. "You're not on the approved guest list." For a second, I thought it was a clerical mistake. "I'm her sister," I replied calmly. He checked his tablet again. His expression shifted. Not hostile, but uncomfortable. "We were given strict instructions," he said. "By who?" He hesitated. Before he could answer, I saw her. My mother was standing just inside the glass doors, speaking to the event coordinator. She looked composed, in control. Wearing champagne-colored silk like she was hosting the royal wedding. She saw me, and she didn't look surprised. She walked over slowly, the way someone does when they've already rehearsed the moment. "I told them not to let you in," she said quietly, but not quietly enough. Security stiffened. A few guests nearby pretended not to listen. "Excuse me?" I asked. "You're not welcome here today," she said smoothly. "I won't have you ruining your sister's wedding." Ruining. Interesting choice of word. "I paid for this wedding," I said evenly. "You insisted," she corrected quickly. "Don't twist it." There it was. The revision. 3 months earlier, when my sister called me crying because they couldn't afford the venue deposit. My mother had said, "If you really care about family, you'll step up." So I stepped up, but I did it carefully. The contract was signed in my name. Every vendor agreement routed through me, because I've learned something over the years. Never fund something you don't legally control. My mother didn't like that. She said it made her look like she couldn't provide. I said that wasn't my problem. Standing there now, locked out. I understood this wasn't about logistics. This was punishment. "You're not coming in," she repeated, firmer this time. "Today is not about you." "It never was," I replied. A few more guests had started noticing. Whispers traveled fast in formal wear. My mother's smile tightened. "You made your choices," she said. "You don't get to show up when it's convenient." I almost laughed. Convenient. As if funding a 6-figure event was convenience. "I'm not here for you," I said calmly. "I'm here for my sister." "She doesn't want drama," my mother replied quickly, then stopped creating it. That was when the venue manager approached. He had the careful posture of someone trained in discretion. "Is there a problem?" he asked gently. "No problem," my mother answered before I could speak. "Just a guest misunderstanding." The manager looked at me. Recognition flickered across his face. He checked his folder. Then he turned to my mother. "Ma'am," he said quietly, but clearly enough for the nearby cluster of guests to hear. "Would you like to explain to the contract holder why she's being denied entry?" The words landed like glass shattering. Contract holder, not guest, not +1. Contract holder. Every head within earshot turned. For the first time since I arrived, my mother didn't respond immediately. She blinked. Her mouth parted slightly, because she had remembered. And she had forgotten. She had forgotten whose signature secured the date. Whose bank transfer cleared the deposits, whose name was legally attached to every service inside that building. The security guard stepped subtly aside. The manager looked at me respectfully. "Ms. Reynolds," he said, "would you like to proceed inside?" I didn't move yet. I just looked at my mother. For years, she had controlled rooms with narrative. Today, paper controlled the room, and paper doesn't bend for pride. For the first time that morning, she didn't have anything to say. 3 months before the wedding, my sister called me at midnight. She wasn't dramatic by nature. She's softer than I am, less confrontational, the kind of person who apologizes when someone bumps into her. So when I heard her crying, I knew it was real. "We're going to lose the venue," she whispered. "The second deposit is due Friday." I asked how much. She told me. It was more than her fiancé made in 3 months. I didn't hesitate. "Send me the contract," I said. There was silence on the line. Then she said, "Mom said she'd handle it." That was my first warning. Handle it usually meant leverage it. When the contract arrived in my inbox, I noticed something immediately. It was in my mother's name. Not my sister's, not the couple's. My mother's. I called my sister back. "Why is Mom the contracting party?" She said it's easier if she manages everything. My sister replied, "She's already talking to vendors." Of course she was. Because whoever controls the contract controls the narrative. And my mother loves narratives. I drove down that weekend. The venue was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Lake view. White roses already included in the decor package. My sister looked at it like it was a dream she didn't dare touch. My mother looked at it like it was a stage. "She deserves something elegant," my mother said when she saw me. "And we can't have this looking cheap. Interesting word, considering she hadn't paid a cent yet." I asked the venue coordinator a few quiet questions. Payment schedule, cancellation clauses, authority over guest list adjustments. Then I asked one more thing. "Who has final decision-making power under this contract?" "The signatory," he replied, which was currently my mother. I looked at her. She smiled sweetly. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll make sure everything is tasteful." Tasteful, in her vocabulary, meant controlled. That afternoon, I transferred the full remaining balance, every dollar. And then I did one thing she didn't expect. I requested an amendment. The contract would be reassigned to me as financial guarantor and primary authority. My sister didn't understand at first. "It's just paperwork," she said. "It's protection," I corrected gently. My mother was furious when she found out. "You don't trust me?" she demanded. "This isn't about trust," I replied. "It's about clarity." But it was about trust. I didn't trust her not to use the wedding as currency, because history had already taught me how that works. Growing up, every expense came with strings. I paid for your dance lessons. I bought your car. I funded your college applications. Each statement wasn't generosity. It was insurance for future obedience. I wasn't going to let my sister's wedding become another policy. Once the contract was in my name, the dynamic shifted. Suddenly, guest list changes required my confirmation. Vendor substitutions required my approval. Budget increases required my signature. My mother hated that. She masked it as irritation. "You're being difficult." No, I was being structured. The real conflict began when she handed me a revised guest list 2 weeks later. 3 names were missing. One of them was my fiancé. I looked at her slowly. "Why is Daniel removed?" She folded her arms. "It's a family wedding. He's been with me for 3 years. He's not family." And there it was. This wasn't about space. It wasn't about budget. It was about control. If she could decide who entered that room, she could decide whose presence mattered. I put the list down. "If he's not welcome, neither am I." She stared at me. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." She didn't remove the other 2 names from spite. She removed Daniel because he's the only person who has ever told her no without flinching. He sees her clearly, and she knows it. Over the following weeks, tension built quietly. She complained to relatives that I was micromanaging. She told my sister I was making things complicated. But every invoice was paid, every floral arrangement confirmed, every musician contracted. The wedding moved forward flawlessly, which made her loss of authority even more visible. So when I stopped transferring monthly money to her, because I had finally drawn that boundary, it created the final fracture. The wedding became her last remaining lever, and on the morning of the ceremony, she decided to pull it. Denying me entry wasn't an accident. It was an attempt to remind me who she believed still held power. She forgot something critical. Power without paperwork is performance, and performance collapses when the contract speaks. My mother didn't try to block me from the wedding because of my fiancé. She didn't even do it because of the contract. She did it because, 2 months earlier, I stopped paying her. Not for the wedding, for her life, for years. I had transferred money into her account every month. At first, it was temporary help. Then it became routine, mortgage upgrades, kitchen renovations, a new car she didn't need but said she deserved. If I hesitated, she reminded me of sacrifice. If I hadn't worked so hard, you wouldn't be where you are. If I hadn't supported you, you wouldn't have succeeded. Support, in her language, meant proximity to my success. So when I finally said, calmly and without apology, "I'm not sending money anymore," she didn't cry. She recalculated. "You think you're better than me now?" she asked. "No," I said. "I just don't want money to be how we relate." She laughed once. "That's convenient for you." And from that moment on, the narrative shifted. To relatives, she said I had changed. To my sister, she said I was becoming cold. To friends, she said, success ruined her. What actually ruined the dynamic was independence. The wedding was the last arena where she believed she could still control me publicly, because money normally buys leverage. But the contract took that leverage away, so she tried something else. Humiliation. If she could deny me entry, if she could position me as disruptive, if she could imply I was unstable or selfish, she could reclaim authority in front of an audience. Public exclusion is a powerful message. It says, you don't belong. And belonging has always been her currency. The irony? The only reason the wedding was happening at that venue was because I made it possible. But she couldn't tolerate that being visible. She had already tried subtle methods. 2 weeks before the wedding, she suggested moving me to a back table. "It's better for family unity," she said. I looked at the seating chart. My fiancé placed near the kitchen exit. I moved us to the front. Then she attempted to accidentally remove my speech from the program. The planner called me to confirm. "There seems to be confusion," she said diplomatically. There was no confusion. There was displacement. Each small maneuver had the same goal: shrink my presence. And when shrinking failed, she escalated. The morning of the wedding, she arrived early. Earlier than necessary. She spoke privately with security. The story she told them, I later learned, was simple. There may be a guest attempting to cause tension. If she arrives, call me first. She didn't use my name. She didn't have to. She relied on assumption. A well-dressed woman arguing at the entrance must be the problem. She counted on one thing, that I wouldn't make a scene. She was right about that. I don't perform emotion publicly. I don't yell. I don't chase. That's what makes the truth more dangerous. When the venue manager said, "Would you like to explain to the contract holder why she's being denied entry?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He just referenced authority. And authority, this time, wasn't hers. The deeper truth, the part she didn't expect, was this. I didn't need to fight her. The paperwork already had. For years, she controlled rooms through story. She's difficult. She's ungrateful. She doesn't understand family. But a contract doesn't respond to storytelling. It responds to signatures. And mine was at the bottom of every page. When guests turned their heads that evening, it wasn't because I defended myself. It was because they realized something uncomfortable. If I had paid for the wedding, if my name was legally attached, then why was I being treated like an intruder? That question was louder than any argument I could have made. My mother thrives in emotional chaos, but she struggles in logistical clarity. And weddings, for all their romance, are logistics. Permits, invoices, liability clauses, access rights. When security stepped aside, It wasn't sympathy. It was protocol. And protocol doesn't bend for pride. Inside that glass conservatory were 180 guests, all dressed for celebration. None of them knew the power shift had already happened before the ceremony even began. My mother thought she was denying me entry. What she was actually denying was control she no longer had. And control, when it slips publicly, doesn't fade quietly. It fractures. When the security guard stepped aside, no one clapped. This wasn't a movie. It was worse. It was real time. I walked through the glass doors slowly, not triumphantly, not dramatically, just steadily. The string quartet faltered for half a beat before recovering. Conversations thinned into whispers. My mother remained frozen near the entrance. For someone who lives off performance, silence is suffocating. The venue manager didn't leave immediately. He stayed just long enough to ensure there would be no further misunderstandings. "Ms. Reynolds," he said politely to me, "if you need anything adjusted before the ceremony, please let us know." Adjusted. Such a harmless word. My mother's lips tightened. Guests were now openly staring, not at me, at her, because the math had clicked. If I was the contract holder, then the story they'd been quietly fed, about me being unstable, dramatic, disruptive, no longer made sense. Disruptive people don't usually fund six-figure weddings. My aunt approached cautiously. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, my mother did. "There's been confusion," she said smoothly. She insisted on handling paperwork, and security didn't recognize her. Recognize me, as if I were an uninvited +1. The venue manager cleared his throat gently. "There was no confusion," he said evenly. "Our instructions were to deny entry unless approved by the contracting party." That word again. Contracting party. It echoed louder this time, because now it wasn't private. Now it was contextual. My mother shot him a sharp look, but he had already stepped back into professionalism. The damage wasn't dramatic. It was structural. And then my sister appeared. She had heard enough noise to step out from the bridal suite, still in her robe, hair half-curled, makeup unfinished. She looked confused. "Why is everyone staring?" she asked. No one answered immediately. Her eyes landed on me first. "Why are you outside?" she asked softly. Then she noticed security. Then she noticed our mother. And slowly, she understood that something had happened. My mother moved quickly. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said, touching my sister's arm. "Just logistics." But my sister looked at me instead. "Is that true?" I didn't glance at our mother. "I didn't need to. I was told I wasn't on the guest list," I said calmly. Her expression shifted. "That's impossible." "It was intentional," I corrected gently. Silence again. My sister turned toward our mother. "Why?" That single word did more damage than anything else that night. Because it wasn't accusatory. It was hurt. And hurt doesn't spin easily. My mother tried to recover. "I was protecting your day," she said. "I didn't want tension." "Tension from what?" my sister asked. No answer. Because any answer would require explanation. And explanation would require truth. The venue manager, sensing the moment, added quietly, "All payments and authorizations have been handled by your sister." My sister blinked. "All payments?" I held her gaze. "Yes." She looked between us. "You told me you were covering deposits," she said to our mother. "I managed it," our mother corrected quickly. Managed, not paid. The distinction settled heavily in the air. Guests were no longer pretending not to watch. This wasn't spectacle. It was revelation. And revelations at weddings travel fast. My sister's voice dropped. "Did she pay for everything?" "Yes," I said. My mother didn't contradict me. Because she couldn't. Every vendor receipt had my signature. Every transfer had my confirmation. Every floral arrangement blooming behind us existed because I wired the funds. For the first time that night, my sister wasn't looking at me with confusion. She was looking at our mother with something else. Recognition. Not dramatic betrayal. Just clarity. My mother had attempted to erase the person financing the entire event. And she had done it publicly, which meant the recovery would also be public. I need 5 minutes, my sister said quietly. She walked back inside without waiting for permission. The crowd didn't disperse immediately, because everyone sensed something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't about entry anymore. It was about credibility. My mother turned toward me, her voice low and tight. You didn't have to humiliate me. I almost smiled. I didn't. And that was the part she couldn't accept. I hadn't exposed her. I hadn't announced anything. She had made a move. And the paperwork responded. For years, she controlled rooms through implication. Tonight, implication met documentation. And documentation doesn't flinch. 5 minutes turned into 15. The quartet resumed softly inside, trying to fill the tension with something beautiful. Guests drifted back toward their seats. But no one returned to the easy laughter from earlier. Conversations were clipped. Eyes still flicked toward the entrance. My mother stood rigid beside me. You could have handled this privately, she said through her teeth. You handled it publicly, I replied. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Because she knew. The venue manager approached once more. Quieter now. The bride has asked to speak with both of you in the preparation suite. Both of you, not just me. We walked in silence through the glass corridor toward the bridal room. The air inside felt different, cooler, insulated from the watching guests. My sister stood near the vanity mirror, half-dressed, bouquet resting on the table beside her. Her makeup artist had stepped out. The door closed behind us. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my sister turned to me. Did you really pay for everything? Yes. How much? I hesitated. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't want numbers to overshadow the meaning. Enough, I said. The venue, catering, florals, music, photography, all of it. Her eyes widened slightly. She turned to our mother. You told me you were splitting it. I coordinated it. Our mother insisted. She insisted on paying. That word again. Insisted. As if I had forced generosity. My sister looked confused. Why didn't you tell me? I answered honestly. Because it wasn't about me. And that was the truth. I didn't pay for the wedding to gain influence. I paid because she called me crying. Because she was overwhelmed. Because I could. But I protected myself legally because I know how our mother operates. My sister's voice softened. Then why were you being blocked? There it was. The question that mattered. I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence press against the room. My mother filled it first. She's being dramatic, she said quickly. I just didn't want unnecessary stress before the ceremony. Stress from what? My sister asked again. This time, her tone shifted. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was suspicion. I met her eyes. Because I stopped giving Mom money 2 months ago. The room stilled. My sister slowly turned toward our mother. Is that true? That's irrelevant. Our mother snapped. It wasn't irrelevant. It was the missing piece. For years, my financial support had been steady, quiet, unquestioned. When I ended it, something fundamental changed. Leverage disappeared. My sister's expression shifted into something I hadn't seen before. Not anger, awareness. You tried to block her because she stopped funding you? She asked quietly. Our mother's composure cracked for half a second. I have done everything for this family, she said defensively. Everything. That's not what I asked, my sister replied. That was the moment I realized something important. This wasn't my confrontation anymore. It was theirs. My sister stepped closer to our mother. You told me she was difficult, she said. You said she was making things complicated. She was, our mother shot back. Always questioning, always controlling, because her name is on the contract, my sister said slowly, which she paid for. The logic was simple. And simplicity is dangerous when manipulation relies on confusion. My sister looked at me again. Why didn't you fight back outside? Because I didn't need to, I said. That answer landed, because she understood. If I had raised my voice, it would have reinforced the narrative. If I had accused, it would have looked messy. Instead, I let the venue manager state a fact. And facts don't argue. Tears welled in my sister's eyes, not from drama, but from recalibration. I didn't know, she whispered. I know, I said. She inhaled slowly. Then she did something our mother didn't expect. She walked to the small desk in the room where copies of vendor paperwork were kept for reference. She picked up the contract folder. She opened it, and she saw my signature. Clear, black ink, undeniable. For the first time that day, she wasn't looking at either of us. She was looking at proof. And proof doesn't soften for pride. My sister held the contract in her hands for a long time, not reading every page, just staring at the signature. Mine. Then she closed the folder slowly and looked up. Why would you try to keep her out? She asked our mother again. Her voice wasn't raised. That made it heavier. Our mother shifted her weight. Defensive now instead of commanding. I was protecting you, she repeated. She creates tension. My sister's eyes sharpened. By paying for my wedding? Silence. There's a moment in every power shift when the person who used to control the room realizes the script isn't working anymore. You could see it happening. My mother tried one last angle. She's trying to embarrass me, she said, pointing slightly in my direction. She always needs to prove something. I finally spoke. I didn't say anything, and that was the part she couldn't fight. Everything that had happened so far had been initiated by her. She gave instructions to security. She framed me as a problem. She tried to deny entry. All I did was stand there and let the contract speak. My sister turned fully toward her. Did you tell security not to let her in? A pause. Yes, my mother admitted, but quickly added, because I didn't want disruption. From the person who paid for everything? That question echoed in the small bridal suite like a verdict. My mother didn't answer, because there wasn't a version of that story that made sense anymore. For years, she had relied on emotional fog, confusion, half-truths, implied sacrifices, but paperwork cuts through fog. And today, the fog cleared in front of witnesses. My sister's shoulders straightened in a way I hadn't seen before. Mom, she said carefully, you don't get to erase someone and call it protection. That sentence changed the entire dynamic. Not because it was dramatic, because it was accurate. Erase. That's what had happened. Erase my contribution. Erase my authority. Erase my presence. My mother's voice dropped lower. After everything I've done for you, my sister interrupted her. Stop! It was the first time I had ever heard her say that word to our mother. Clear, firm, unshaking. Today is my wedding, she continued. And I won't start my marriage watching you push people out because you feel threatened. Threatened? The word hung between us, because that was it. Not anger, not protection. Threat. My financial independence had shifted the balance she was used to, and instead of adjusting, she tried to reassert dominance publicly. My sister walked toward me. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I shook my head. This isn't about apology. It is, she insisted. I should have asked more questions. Maybe, but this was never about her. It was about control. She turned back to our mother. You owe her an apology. Our mother stiffened. I will not apologize for trying to maintain order. There it was, still clinging to authority. My sister didn't argue. She just nodded once. Then she did something decisive. She handed the contract folder to me. If your name is on this, she said, then today, you decide who stays and who goes. The room went still. That wasn't symbolic. It was literal. The contract gave me that power, and everyone knew it. I looked at my sister carefully. I'm not here to remove anyone, I said. I'm here to celebrate you. That answer mattered, because power used gently is louder than power used aggressively. My sister exhaled. Then let's go get married. She walked past our mother toward the door. For the first time that day, my mother didn't move first. She followed, not leading, following. And that shift was subtle, but permanent. Because once control collapses publicly, it rarely rebuilds the same way. The ceremony started 10 minutes late, not because of chaos, because of recalibration. When we walked back into the conservatory, the atmosphere had changed. Not ruined, not dramatic, just clearer. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. Watching who stood where. Watching who spoke first. Watching who no longer did. My mother took her seat in the front row. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She knew the dynamic had shifted. I sat beside Daniel. He squeezed my hand once. "You okay?" he murmured. "I am now," I said. Because here's the thing about being publicly challenged and publicly validated in the same hour. It removes ambiguity. For years, I had been positioned as difficult, too structured, too independent, too unwilling to just let things go. Today, structure protected me. Independence protected me. Boundaries protected me. The ceremony itself was beautiful. My sister's voice trembled during her vows. Her fiancé looked like he couldn't believe his luck. The lake reflected light through the glass ceiling like nothing messy had happened an hour earlier. But something had happened, and everyone knew it. At the reception, guests approached me carefully. "I didn't realize you handled everything," an aunt said. "That was generous," a cousin added. I nodded politely. I didn't correct anyone, because this wasn't about reputation repair. It was about equilibrium. Halfway through dinner, my mother approached our table. Not dramatically, not loudly, just measured. She looked at Daniel first, then at me. "We need to talk," she said quietly. "No," I replied just as quietly. Her eyes flashed. Surprise first, then irritation. "This isn't the place. You chose the place this morning," I said. She inhaled sharply. For a second, I thought she might escalate, but she glanced around the room. People were watching again. Not openly, but enough. Power doesn't feel as strong when it's no longer assumed. Her voice softened artificially. "I was trying to protect the day. I know what you were trying to protect," I said evenly. That stopped her, because we both understood the unspoken word. Control. She shifted strategies. "You could have handled it differently." "I didn't handle anything," I reminded her. "You did." Silence. The contract hadn't embarrassed her. Her decision had, and there's a difference. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "I don't like not being needed." It wasn't an apology, but it was honest. I studied her. For years, being needed meant being dependent. I said, "That's not the same thing." She didn't argue. Because she couldn't. Dependency had been her currency, and I had closed the account. After dessert, my sister approached me privately. "I want to transfer the contract," she said. "It's already yours," I replied. "No," she shook her head. Legally, she wanted the final signature moved into her name, not because she doubted me, but because she understood something now. Ownership matters. Control matters. Clarity matters. We walked together to the event manager. I signed the amendment. So did she. The venue was officially under her authority for the remainder of the night. Not mine, not our mother's, hers. When I handed her the pen back, she smiled. Not the soft, apologetic smile I'd known my whole life. A steadier one. Later that evening, as Daniel and I stepped outside for air, I looked back through the glass. My mother was seated alone for a moment, watching the dance floor. Not excluded, not humiliated, just quieter. And I realized something important. I wasn't locked out of a wedding. I was locked out of a narrative. The narrative where I fund things but stay small, where I contribute but don't control, where I apologize for having leverage. This time, the paperwork told the truth before I had to. And paper doesn't bend for pride. At 34, I didn't lose my place at a family wedding. I reclaimed it, because sometimes you don't have to raise your voice to shift power. Sometimes, you just have to make sure your name is on the contract.